Oh God, how I need you. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. Worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. Worship Your holy name. The sun comes up. It's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. Strength is failing, the end draws near, and my time has come. Still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul. I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without You, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need
everybody, and welcome to chapter 2 of Follow Your Faith, Following the Very Life of Jesus. And we are going to penetrate more deeply into Jesus's passion and really zoom into the great holy city of Jerusalem, really the capital of Christianity, of Judaism, and Islam in many ways too. Did you guys get to the Tomb of the Rock by any chance? Where Muhammad is apparently ascended into heaven, which is right above the Western Wall.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. We
Okay.
didn't go to that.
Didn't go
All
to
right.
it.
Anyway, that's good. Again, I digress already with all this. So let's pray for a moment, and then we'll get started. Thank you, Linda, Tom, for being here. Jerry's with us this week, so you can throw your questions out to him that way. And of course, Steve is here running everything for all of us. So let's begin with a prayer in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, your Son, Jesus, consubstantial with you, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, really did come down here and live among us. And he really did die historically 2,000 years ago in the holy city, the great city, the ancient city of Jerusalem. Help us to try to penetrate more deeply into that experience here tonight, that we may come to know that indeed you love us in such a fashion, not only that you come through your Son, but that you suffered and died for us through your Son, that you weren't watching all this going on. You were a participant every single step along the way. The steps we're going to follow here today in our Follow Your Faith in this, in following the very life of Jesus in his passion, his death, and his resurrection. So bless us tonight. Help us to be open-hearted to know your love for us as expressed through the events that we're going to ponder here tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
So our first thing we're going to do is Steve's going to put up our slides here, and we're going to show you a map of Jerusalem. And we want to sort of point out some different things so you can see how far away or how close they were together. And so hopefully this will give you an overhead view, like a drone's view of what happened here. And we're going to turn on our little mouse here, and then Linda's going to take over from here. Off we go.
So this should demonstrate a little bit. There we go. Just how close everything is in Jerusalem. So,
Yeah, it's not a big place.
right. The box here in the red and yellow is the remains of the temple. We'll talk about that first, and it's really the holiest site for three religions, as Father mentioned, and I'll talk a little bit about what's significant to each of those three religions, and then maybe just going counterclockwise. Let's see here. We're going to talk about.
There's Golgotha, yeah, right
Yeah,
there.
Golgotha.
Golgotha's there. That's where he was
So-
crucified.
Right.
In-
Well,
If we go, yeah, there's where he
Yeah.
was arrested over there where the pointer is now.
Right.
It's a Garden of Gethsemane. Did you guys get there?
we
We
did.
did.
We're going
All
to
right,
talk about
awesome,
that
great.
tonight. And this is the Mount of Olives, so we'll talk about walking down the Mount of Olives like Jesus did on Palm Sunday, riding the donkey.
Is Bethany right to the,
Yes. Well, it says to Bethany, so I think it must be this way.
where he that's where he was with
Right.
Lazarus and Martha and Mary.
We'll talk about down here in the left-hand corner, the upper room where there was the Last Supper. We'll talk about that. The high priest Caiaphas's house. We didn't get there.
Does it still exist even?
I think it does.
Okay.
I think it does. Up here is the Praetorium. You can see how close everything is. This is all walkable. So that just sort of tells you. And then we were on the Via Dolorosa, which is where we prayed the walking stations of the cross. I don't know where that is in relation to this map, but
Now, all that's very populated, filled with people, many layers
Yes.
there
yes,
with all that.
yeah.
yeah.
So
So there's the wall around the city there too.
yeah, you can
And I
see
can't
that
think of
here.
anything else that's good. I hope folks feel you have a little bit of a understanding of where all these things begin to take place. Okay,
Okay, so
great. We'll pass
give
this
this
back
back
over.
to Steve. There we go.
All right.
All right. So here we go. Okay. We have to get it.
So we have to get
front
our
and center.
slides. Any questions about that, folks? Any questions about the map? Anything on there that you wonder about? But I think the idea that it's that close together, I think, is very kind of significant for us.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just as a recap, we flew into Tel Aviv and spent the first 3 days at the Sea of Galilee, which we talked about last week.
Right.
And then the final 3 days of our pilgrimage were spent in Jerusalem. So
Right.
everything that we're going to talk about this evening happened in the 3 days that we were
Right.
in
Yeah.
Jerusalem before.
Yeah, good point. We should have done that in the very beginning. We didn't do that. Yeah, it's a good idea.
All right. So, of course, the Jerusalem temple is the center of worship in ancient Israel. This is a view of the temple from the church we'll talk about later, St. Peter and Gallicantu. So you can see the Western Wall.
There's the tomb of the rock, the one with gold there. That's the
Yes,
tomb.
Yeah. And I'll explain. The reason we didn't get there, it was a Catholic pilgrimage. So I'm pretty sure that they didn't want us, they didn't think we would care.
Yeah.
And with all due respect to Muslims, but I think it was not on our Catholic roster.
There's a lot to see. There's a lot
and I
to
think you
see.
get a sense of how densely it's
Yeah, that's
populated
yes,
too. You know
yes,
how,
yes,
how
yes.
close the buildings are and how narrow the streets are, and
Yeah.
there are you may not see them on the slides, but there are so many tour
Are those
buses.
cars parked
Yeah.
up there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I have a slide in here. You'll see later on the Mount of Olives when we talk about the cemeteries. If you look very carefully, there's a row of buses. I mean, they just pack them in, and these drivers have to be so brave
Yeah,
because the streets are tight. And,
In fact, the driver who was with us the whole trip was a retired Israeli tank driver.
yeah.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
Very-
I'd be safe with him, I
Yeah,
think. You know?
very, very cool
he
guy.
was very,
Yeah, very cool guy.
confident, very
Yeah.
confident.
So this is a big overview of what we'll talk about. The Jerusalem Archaeological Park is an active dig site. So they're constantly looking for things. And so this is the center of worship. The Western Wall, we found out, is a very popular site for bar mitzvahs. And I think we were there on a Thursday the first time. And so they said that's a very popular day as well. So,
Go a couple of them at the same time.
oh,
Yeah.
there were many.
Yeah.
I only included, I think, one slide, but we saw several there. And I guess there are outfits in Jerusalem that basically will make all the arrangements for you if you're coming from the States or from another country. So they get the band.
they got a
They make
band.
all the arrangements. They do a party afterwards.
And along the same, I'm not real familiar with the Jewish religion, but I think Linda and I came back with a deeper appreciation of the religion, because even on the flight
Yeah.
over and back, there would be certain times where the Jewish members of our flight would put on their
Robes of prayer.
robes and
Yeah.
pray.
Yes.
Yeah, they're phylacteries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the gentleman sitting next, and you could tell because they were all traditional, in traditional
Hasidic,
garb,
yes.
Hasidic.
Yes.
And so the gentleman next to me, we had 3 seats across. So Tom was in the window, I was in the middle, and I had a Hasidic Jew next to me, and he was very kind. And so I said, "Would you explain to me what that means?" When he was done praying, and he was telling me how the straps,
Yeah.
you know, and the what I would call a box. I'm sure it has a name.
It has the
It's
Shema in it.
knowledge.
Yeah.
And he had a lovely way of explaining it and the meaning and the significance. So yeah, we did.
Pretty much every religion, Muslim and Catholic and Buddhist, all use beads. Jews use straps. They're very different. They'll run their straps around
Yes.
their arms this way. They pray with the straps the same way we would pray with our beads, as
Right.
far as the Hail Mary and anyway. With
So
our rosary,
there were probably on our flight there were more Jews making the pilgrimage than there were Christians. I would say.
Awesome.
So, and you know, they were everywhere, kind of checking things out, and I thought this was kind of a cool picture. I wanted to talk. I mentioned last week how we talked about safety a little bit, and I thought this picture was kind of neat. So every 18-year-old in Israel is required to serve in the Israel Defense. It's called something. Now I've forgotten. And
military.
they have to serve 2 or 3 years. And they told us that women have been members of that defense force since its inception. Now they don't go to the front lines, but they're very active in the military.
One interesting bit of information we got was that the soldiers, once they're issued their weapon, that's their weapon. So if you're serving in the military and you go off base, let's say, you leave your weapon on base, they have their weapon with them 24/7, just in case
okay.
something would happen, and you know they're prepared at all times. So
Those are AK whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
take them home with them when they're off duty, and
This
certain-
was the picture I referenced last week.
Yes,
How
you did.
They had their machine guns
And
and,
their
a cup of
coffee
coffee.
cups,
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
were pretty casual about the whole thing. So we went to the Western Wall first. This is the welcoming.
One time I called it the Wailing Wall and I got yelled at.
Well, I was going to talk about that because
You know, I
we
get yelled
had
at.
heard of it as the Wailing Wall, and
Yeah.
our Jewish tour guide explained to us how that is very offensive to the Jews because the Jews were excluded from the temple for many years when it was under Roman occupation or under the Romans, and then when it was destroyed, they mourned it, and they have a holiday that commemorates the destruction of the temples, and Jews would typically appear at the Western Wall and weep, and that's how it became the Wailing Wall. But our tour guide explained to us how it's like mocking the Jewish people for their sorrow, and that's why it's considered.
And maybe is it not allowed for us to say it or for them to say it? Is it not like that?
I don't know that anyone.
Because I was saying it, I was actually
Currently.
being interviewed by somebody in a group of, and I said Wailing Wall, and I was corrected immediately when I
yeah.
said that.
Well, and I don't know when that came about. We were told about it, but it seems to me that there was a local church many years ago, a local church here, who had what they called a Wailing Wall where they could put their prayer
Oh, okay,
intentions
yeah.
into. So I don't know whether that's a more recent thing, but we were told
About that
again
too.
by a Jew about the significance of that, and so I thought that was very important. As we talked about our trip, I didn't want to say anything that would offend anybody. The wall is divided up into male and female sections, so Tom and I could not pray together that day. So this is behind the brown stone wall is the men's section, and these women are obviously coming out of the women's section. So the right side of the screen is the women's section of the wall.
And it was appropriate to have your head covered, men and women.
Yes.
Well,
yeah.
not exactly. I thought women had to have their head covered, and you only had to have your shoulders covered, and you had to have something on that covered your knees. So I took a headscarf and put it on, and then I realized a lot of women didn't have headscarves on. But if you didn't have your shoulders covered as a woman, they had a place there where you could either buy or rent scarves, or some of them I think
That would be
were
in the
paper.
Christian things too.
Well, I know when we went to Rome, you had to have your head covered a lot of places, so you had to have a headscarf there.
And your shoulders as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I knew that was more the shoulders and the
Yeah.
knees thing
Right.
with
Yeah.
the Christians too.
yeah.
Right.
So they have these prayer. This is the prayer plaza. So they have these bookcases, and the women's section of the Western Wall contains Jewish prayer books, which are called Sidurim. Yeah, and books of Psalms for worshipers. This is the women's section, obviously. So you can see that most of the women don't have their heads covered. And they have these chairs set up, so some people just sit and meditate. Others go to the wall and touch it. And these are,
Yes.
this is what the wall is famous for. Every year, we learned that more than 1 million prayer requests or notes are left in crevices in the wall. Now, here's the funny thing. I knew ahead of time that we were supposed to get notes. and you gave me a note to put in
Yes,
the
I did.
Western
Yeah,
Wall.
yeah.
And your note was like the size of a thank you card. Most people write them on tiny little scraps of paper.
Oops.
We found a big crevice, so
Yeah, we
Okay,
found a
okay.
huge.
For your
In fact, that's why I included the picture on the left because I think you took Father
did.
Mark's
I
note
did,
and
yeah.
found a big chunk. But most of them, and that's a blow up on the
I
right.
think we were praying for the parish. Is one of the things we were praying for. with all
I
that,
didn't
so.
read it. It was,
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
it was
it's okay.
but a lot of people texted me their prayer requests, and I had the most amazing prayer requests to put in there that I then wrote. I got the little tablet from the hotel room and wrote them on there. So, one of my friends prayed for Vladimir Putin's conversion,
Wow.
and
Okay.
I thought, how wonderful. I'm always thinking probably not very charitable thoughts about him. And here was somebody praying to convert his heart. And other people prayed for the conversions of their families. And, it was just really beautiful. So here I was, the picture on the right is all of my intentions, which I folded down and squished under this one little rock, and they all fit. So I was a little nervous, but they all fit. So everybody's prayer intention got in the Western Wall. And we were told that twice a year someone removes them. And I found out online that there's a rabbi, Shmuel Rabinowitz, removes them from the wall and buries them on the Mount of Olives on Passover and Rosh Hashanah.
Beautiful.
And that's his job. He's the rabbi of the Western Wall and the holy sites of Israel.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that was pretty cool.
Get that job.
Um,
Yeah.
And so here's me with my unnecessary head cover, but it was a bright, beautiful,
Now,
sunny
Tom,
day.
would you have to wear a hat? If you didn't wear that hat, you'd have to put a
they had some hats available.
And
like, kinda
yarmulkes.
like
yarmulke. Yeah,
Yeah.
yarmulke, yeah.
Yeah, they had.
So you put an Eagles hat on instead.
Well,
Okay.
I did, but, well,
Our son lives in Philadelphia. We have to
Okay,
be,
all right,
we
okay.
have to be Eagles fans.
symbolizes America. It's
That's all
America.
right. That's okay.
And there's a distance where people do not turn their back to the
Oh,
wall
that's
as
right.
well. You kind of walk back.
Especially in some cultures, they said it's disrespectful to turn your back on the wall. I don't have a picture of. I thought maybe. Let's see.
I don't think
Yeah, it's not in this picture, but and I didn't see anybody, but Dr. Sri told us that sometimes you'll see people backing up away from the wall, and because it's a sign of disrespect.
I think that with the Blessed Sacrament, a lot of times, I back away first and I'll turn to walk away. Same thing, So I think it just sort of is innate in you and something like that.
This is a picture. So we walked from the Western Wall past the temple to the southern steps. So this is sort of a bigger view of where we were in that Jerusalem Archaeological Park. It's still beautiful. The parts that remain. And what we saw was 2,000 years old.
Right.
Right.
So these are the southern steps at the bottom. And this is Dr. Edward Sri, our pilgrimage director. He was giving a talk this day on Simeon, who prophesied that Jesus, he was the man who said he couldn't die until he met the Messiah.
This would be back in Jesus' birth. The
Right.
presentation
When
is,
Mary and
yeah,
Joseph
yeah.
brought Jesus to the temple, which is
Correct.
where we are,
Mhm.
and Simeon said he was the Messiah. So I thought that was a really
And said to Mary, your heart will be pierced, along with your son. And so the whole idea of our mother's sorrows really comes from that particular feast day.
And if our viewers didn't see the show last week, I'll just mention again that this was a pilgrimage. So every day we had Bible teachings and time to pray, in addition to our Jewish tour guide giving us the history. Dr. Sri would pray the rosary. We got pretty much all the mysteries of the rosary. We would pray a decade of the rosary everywhere.
Where you
we
went,
were.
Yeah, on the bus
yeah.
to the
Yeah.
location.
Yeah.
Yes, that's pretty cool.
So that made it just a wonderful, wonderful trip.
Goes to show you the rosary is very biblical prayer, if we
Yes.
understand it rightly.
And in fact, to prepare for this, he wrote a book called walking with Mary through the Holy Land, I think. And so that,
Biblical walk.
Very nice.
yeah, a biblical walk with Mary through the Holy Land. This is at the Southern Steps, and everybody just had beautiful ways of praying. Some of them touching the wall, others just in solitude. And again, Dr. Sri would say, "Okay, we've taken our pictures. Put your cameras down and just take the next 15 minutes and talk to
Quiet.
God."
Yeah.
So it was really serene. In fact, we spent so much time praying, we missed the group picture. We sort of got mesmerized by where we were. And I mean, we noticed last week, I think there weren't a lot of people. And again, we hit this just at the right time. This is the photo I was talking about. So this is from the Southern Steps. Tom is off by himself. And that's looking at the Mount of Olives. You can see the line of buses that I was talking about.
And those are all
before.
tombs in the background. That's a burial site.
Okay. I
Those
mean,
are all-
on the side of the hill there.
Yeah, the whole
They're-
whole way up.
And it's all Jewish graves.
Yeah.
If we get through all the slides today, we'll talk about the Tomb of the Prophets, which is a graveyard that we saw coming down the Mount of Olives. But this is the view from the other side. So
So according to the Acts of the Apostles, this is Jesus' ascension site.
yes. So that picture is looking west. When you're on the Mount of Olives, you're looking east at the temple.
Right, right.
But yeah,
Beautiful view too, by the way.
beautiful view. Yeah, beautiful view. All right. So speaking of the Mount of Olives, that's where we went next. So this is, as I said, east of Jerusalem. It was named for all of the olive groves that I guess used to be on the slopes, and of course now it's many graveyards. When we get to the Garden of Gethsemane and the church there, you'll see some of the olive trees, which are really spectacular.
And you'll see pebbles on some of the grave sites.
They still
if
do
you,
that.
Yeah, if you visit
Still
the
do
grave
that,
site,
yeah.
That's
you
the
leave
same thing over here in Grandview.
Yeah.
If you look at the Jewish sections of
Yeah.
the cemetery, they will always have little pebbles on top of them that someone showed up and meant that they were there.
right.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
saw that.
And
I'm sure you saw a lot of that.
well, and the reason for that is the Hebrew word for pebble is a word that also means bond. So by placing stones on a headstone, it bonds the deceased with the visitors. And the stones also remind visitors that someone they cared for was there paying respect.
And in some way, they believe in life after death. We can talk about that one in some detail, but there's different versions of that. And I was at a synagogue one time where they had the names of the deceased and prayers for them, the places of prayer. There is a belief of life after death in some fashion in Judaism.
This is us walking down the Mount of Olives, replicating Jesus's going down the mountain on a donkey on Palm Sunday.
Oh,
So
okay.
that was very
Okay.
special. There we go. Oops, went too fast. So as we're going down the Mount of Olives, we stopped at this church called Dominus Flevit, which literally means the Lord wept.
He wept over Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
And this is in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19. Jesus, while riding toward the city of Jerusalem, is overwhelmed by the beauty of the second temple. And when he predicts its future destruction and the exile of the Jewish people, he weeps. I did not get a picture. I probably should have found a stock photo. This is not the church. This is one of the outbuildings. The church itself is in the shape of a teardrop to show that Jesus wept.
Wow, how do you do
And
that?
I didn't realize until after the fact that I didn't get the right picture in here, so I apologize about that. It is a Roman Catholic church. Now, we were inside. This is the inside of the church. So you can sort of see how the roof is very arched, very
Pointed.
pointed and arched. So that's kind of the teardrop. This is on the inside. And this is one of the Byzantine mosaic floors that still basically was uncovered at the site. If you remember from last week, we said that many of the churches were built over top the holy sites. And so,
And this would go back 1,400
Oh,
years or
yeah.
so, at least. You know,
and again, we talked about St. Helena last week, how she was known for, finding these holy sites and then commemorating them with churches. So anytime you would see a Byzantine cross, for her, that would be
and that's
evidence.
Constantine. So we're doing 1,700 years ago.
Right. So that was pretty cool. And this is the window from the Church of Dominus Flevit. So you can see that there, you can see the Temple Mount from there. So again, that's looking east, like most churches faced east. This one does it as well. Next, we went to the upper room.
We all know what that is.
So this is where Jesus celebrated the Last Supper, also called the Room of the Last Supper. It was, I have to say, very nondescript. And I did not get a picture. It's a very small room, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
One of our pilgrims had a lovely voice, and so she sang in this very room, which is a song commemorating the Last Supper. The acoustics were amazing. That was very special. But it's kind of just
Yeah, there wasn't a table like
No,
you see
it's
the pictures
it's
of the.
empty now.
It's empty.
Right,
so
yeah.
they just have a window and this little.
Well, they probably sat on the floor, actually.
They probably
Yeah,
did.
with the Last Supper, you see the.
Yeah.
baby.
Oh, yeah. Da Vinci.
The
Da
leader.
Vinci's.
This is one of the very few things in that room is this bronze replica of an olive tree that Pope John Paul gifted. And it is a symbol of peace between the three religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So there's a very ecumenical vibe to that site.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Not always the case. That's nice.
And we did learn through so many of the sites we visited, especially the ones in Bethlehem, how the religions peacefully coexist. And, they're sharing duties as sacristan and other things and maintaining the sites.
Yeah.
I guess it's all the politics, really, that's
Yeah,
the
and,
issue.
and they kind of have a policy of status quo. It just kind of
Yeah.
stays the same.
Yes. Good.
Next, we went to the Garden of Gethsemane. So here are some of those olive trees that I was talking about.
That were they considered to be that old?
No, these were not the trees in Jesus's day, but they're obviously very old. One of the things that they told us, and I think we know this because we've had families come to our churches here to sell their olive wood, that in order to make them fruitful, like many plants, you have to prune them, and they grow like weeds. And so there's a lot of pruning every year. So they have all this olive wood. So that's why that developed into a business for many people, because the wood is plentiful, and it's really an artisan craft that people develop over the
No,
years.
just quickly. Now we're down in the lower part of, or below the city, and it's almost Jesus they had to walk him up a hill, right, to
Right.
take him.
So we came down the Mount of Olives, and the Garden of Gethsemane and the Basilica, which I'll show you in a couple pictures, is almost at the bottom of the Kidron Valley.
Right.
And then you have to walk up the valley again to get to Jerusalem and the temple. But they are so close. And do you agree? I mean, I don't think we realize just how close that is. It's definitely walkable.
I thought, it's kind of funny. All the pictures you see of the Gethsemane are kind of rocky. But whenever you saw it, it was a long time ago. It doesn't seem like it's that rocky. I don't know. Did you get that idea?
Well, I'm sure they've, smoothed it over.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
just my thought. Because these are gardens.
Yes.
That they have. I doubt that those stone pathways
Yeah,
were there.
yeah. So do I.
Yeah, there's been some.
Now, that
landscaping.
looks like what it might look like right there or something.
Yeah.
But it was a garden
Yeah.
of some sort.
So it was just stunning, and we had a lot of time to pray there too. This is the Basilica,
I remember
At
that. I actually
Gethsemane.
remember that.
just a stunning church. The paintings were amazing, and then inside, quite beautiful.
Looks like the Immaculate Conception Basilica, Washington, D.C., doesn't it? Ever been there in the Basilica in Washington?
Yes.
Yes.
It looks
Been there,
very
yeah.
similar.
That's the one
Yeah.
that's kind of outside the city a little bit.
Yeah, it's close to
Oh,
Georgetown.
DC?
Georgetown.
Yeah.
We were there.
Many
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this is the rock. This is the section of bedrock that they've enshrined where Jesus is said to have prayed before his arrest. So this was a very moving time during our trip. Everybody sat in, and you can see in this picture. So this is the
Oh, I see it.
view. The bedrock is center bottom of that photo, and everybody is just sitting around in silence, praying at the spot where Jesus is believed to have prayed. So that was very meaningful and beautiful. Okay, so next is the Church of St. Peter in Gallicantu. This is also, it literally means church, it means
Oh,
cock's crow. So it's also known as Church of the Cock. This is on Mount Zion in Jerusalem. So this church commemorates Peter's denial of Christ in the courtyard of the high priest Caiaphas, and it's believed to stand on the site of the high priest's house.
isn't it amazing that we erect a church to a betrayal? Isn't that something?
Yeah.
We do that.
But I mean, it's an important event, and people
Yes, it
want
is.
to remember, and that's how they need
Is that
to
a Catholic?
do
Catholic?
it.
Looks kind of Eastern. I just thought. I don't know.
I'm
I
not
don't know.
sure.
I don't remember. Mostly when they were Catholic, I tried to write it down, but
Okay.
it could have been. I don't remember that.
But interesting. It looks kind of new.
It's I don't know when it was built, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. This is outside.
There's an archaeological
Yeah,
dig.
they have some remnants of what used to be there. And then underneath the church are these dungeons, the sacred pit. It's thought to be the cell where Jesus was detained
I saw
For
that.
the
That
night.
freaked me out.
following his arrest.
I got claustrophobia looking at that.
Yeah, and you can,
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
look at that. Yeah.
so you look down.
Could you imagine that?
And here again, there are 3 Byzantine crosses again, where they knew something important had happened here, and it was commemorated. And then we actually went into the pit. We took a group picture in the pit as well. But this is, the pit.
There's a psalm that mentions the pit. I can't remember what psalm it is. I don't know if you guys may have said that down there at all. But there was a psalm, I think it's Psalm 98, but I could be dead wrong, about the pit. Could you imagine Jesus down there that night before all that was going to happen? What that would be like by himself down there.
Well, and I
Imagine
remember
that.
someone on the trip saying, I just never thought that he would have had to stay somewhere that night.
Right.
So that was sad. And this was just, if you can imagine Jesus that night, knowing
Wow.
what's to come. I thought this was an amazing sculpture. Of
Amazing.
that.
Really is.
Really, you can just see the pain on his face. The Via Dolorosa is where you pray the Stations of the Cross, walking Stations of the Cross. This was really interesting because it was right in the middle. You talked about this last week, right in the middle of the city. So people are going to work and going to school.
People are shopping and
Yeah.
going about their daily
Isn't
business.
that incredible?
It
And
is.
then you guys are walking
Yeah.
the stations of the
So-
cross. So if you were walking by, you're like,
Right.
it's nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
So 40 of us would stop at a station and people would just bustle past us.
Yeah.
And they were underwhelming, some of the state. I don't know if they still are,
Oh, yeah.
but they were
Right.
underwhelming.
Yeah, you have to look for them really.
Yeah.
And you'll see this was just one of the signs. Take up his cross and follow me.
There's a station.
There's
there's
one
a
of the
station.
stations. Many of them, I have to say, are just the birds are there all the time, so you can tell what's on the stations. It doesn't look like they've been cleaned in quite a while. Nonetheless, still very meaningful. There's just, and again, it wasn't terribly crowded, but there were.
We were there early in the morning.
Were
too.
the stations primarily uphill, going uphill for the most part?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We walked up
Yeah.
a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. how far was it from? Well, how far you have to carry that cross?
Well, it was a lot of walking, and I will say, and it's not, we didn't have a map. We were just following the people in front of us, but because there were 40 of us, it was kind of a long line. And there were a few times when I thought we were going to get lost because someone would turn a
you'd make
corner
it.
and I thought we were going to miss them. So it's not a straight line by any means.
Just walking through town.
And we
the
had
city.
one woman on our trip who used a walking stick, and but she kept up with it. So I'm going to say it was not an onerous walk. This station's at the Armenian Church, number 3.
That's 4. Okay, that's 3, 4. Okay.
I'm not. I didn't
Oh,
take
there's
pictures. of
meeting.
all.
Is that Veronica? I guess.
Be. And that's just a view of us praying one of
And
the
that would
stations.
be in the background. Is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre up there?
It might be.
Okay.
I don't know for certain. That's
There, right
another
there.
picture of it. So I think
I
that
believe it is. Yeah.
That's just a close up of one of the stations.
Jerry, anything going on over there? Are everybody just
Yeah, people
mesmerized
saw, I
watching?
guess. Yeah.
What's it? Just watching. Okay.
Just Karen said it was the St. Rochus that had the Wailing Wall.
That's what I thought.
okay,
That's what I
okay.
thought.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say that in case I was wrong, but that's what I thought. Next, we're going to talk about the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and this was just an amazing experience. They are renovating the outside. From the outside, it's kind of nondescript. It's a little more in ruins than maybe I expected for the contents inside.
Sure.
We had a lot of time here. I'd say a lot of time, maybe 20 minutes, because we got there before they opened. So we were really the first people in the door when we got there, which we'll talk about in a minute, was really wonderful for us because we got a lot of time at the sites. Another beautiful sunny day in Jerusalem, though. This was one of the first things we saw. I included it for us.
Thank you.
The Stabat Mater altar, Our Lady of
Ooh,
Sorrows.
that's a pretty intense statue.
Yeah, very, very much so.
Just the one sword.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of the images I've seen just have the one sword to them, but that's intense.
Yeah, very, very much so. This is the prison of Christ, where he was held before the cross. This is the rock of Calvary. You haven't been doing much talking.
No,
Why
that's
don't you
fine. Keep going.
talk about that? Okay. So this is where Jesus was crucified. Now, I have to say, were you surprised by all the gold there? It was
Yes.
so magnificent and ornate, but I guess I was surprised by that.
I don't remember it. Everything I remember is going into that place where, oh, that's resurrection. I'm sorry. I think I'm messed up
Okay.
here.
Well,
But I don't remember that at all. Maybe it wasn't there.
Was it the Byzantines that were in charge of the site, though, Linda?
I thought the Muslims were.
Muslim?
Yeah,
The
I don't
Muslims
know.
were charged at the Holy Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
No, there were different
Well,
sections.
Because of
think-
ancient,
Different-
yeah, there are different sections.
Different
I was
Yeah.
gonna
sections
say,
were,
because-
Yes.
were
the sacristan that day was Armenian.
yes.
So I think this is much like the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, where they have different sects, monitoring and
Yeah.
Maintaining.
maintaining the site.
It's an Orthodox, Catholic, and maybe the Armenians is the
Yeah.
one. But I know there was 3 sections to the church. When
Yes,
they were,
I
that
believe,
same?
yeah.
Same?
Mhm.
Okay.
So
That's what I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, remember
So
that.
you wait in line, and then you crawl under the altar, and there's some kind of a metal
altar was not there.
urn, and you put your hand in it, and you touch, the,
rock.
rock.
Yeah.
Calvary.
So I put my rosaries on and touched my rosaries to the rock. This was so moving.
That was. There's a monk sitting in there. Was there a monk
Yes.
then in
Well,
there too?
so
Off to the
he
left.
would be
Okay.
off to the left.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you took too long, they would come up and kind of
Tap
not
it.
so gently say, you're done or move along.
We were fortunate enough to go through twice. Then.
Right. We
How'd you pull that off?
so we
The
went here
lines were-
first,
Go ahead.
and then we went to the tomb second. And our priest, Father Matt Hartley, we didn't wait in line for the tomb really at all. And we had time, and he said, I'm going to go again. I mean, if you ever remember when you're a kid, you go to Idlewild and,
Go on the same ride.
and there were no lines, and you could go on the, and this is I don't mean to be sacrilegious in giving this analogy, but when you're a kid and you can get on that roller coaster right after you get off, you know, you're pretty excited.
Yeah.
And it was a brilliant idea. So we went to both of these twice. And I have to tell you, so because we didn't wait in line, I almost didn't have time to prepare. You tell me if you had the same experience. So when I got there and had my, minute or 30 seconds, both places here, which is in the upper level, and the tomb, which is on the lower level, I had instant just washing over with emotion, brought to tears 4 times, twice here, twice at the tomb, without even feeling it come on. I mean, it was that
Almost a
profound.
catharsis of sorts.
Yeah, it was
That's
just
so moving.
profound. The minute you thought about what happened,
right?
it
It's
was
like-
just amazing. This is the
Absolutely
version
amazing.
as you're
Yeah.
walking away, just to show the ornateness of the place. When you come out, you can light candles. Tom lit a candle that day. This is the stone of the anointing. This was pretty cool. So this is a marble slab on the bottom of that, so you can see the metal, sort of frame. And the stone smells like eucalyptus and aloe even now. And what people would do, we saw them doing it, I didn't know ahead of time, you would get a tissue and rub your tissue or your handkerchief on the stone, and when you held it up, you could smell it. So I put mine in a baggie and hoped that it would still smell, and it
Yeah,
doesn't. I took it out
Okay.
a couple weeks later, and it doesn't smell anymore.
Well, we were
but-
fortunate that there weren't any people. I mean,
Yeah, there's nobody there.
When we were leaving,
yes,
then
it
it was
got busy.
teeming with
Yeah,
people.
but we were there early.
But this
Good
is
for you.
this is where they laid Christ to prepare him for the tomb.
Maybe the Pietà could have maybe taken place there
Yeah.
on some sort,
I
something
think
like that.
I think, yeah. And this is the mural behind it,
Yeah, the depiction of
Christ's death.
the anointing.
And this was when I laid my rosary on the stone.
Where this is the tomb. That was the stone of the tomb right
Well,
there.
no,
That was
that's
the
where
anoint- the
where he was
anointing.
prepared. The
Okay,
body was
I got you.
prepared.
Okay,
Yeah.
got
So
you.
the tomb is next. And it's a little cut off just because of our box in the bottom, but you can see the dome, and under the dome you can see like a church within a church. This is the building that they erected over the site of Christ's tomb. So this was interesting, and we were told we were going to have to wait a long time. I think my clicker isn't working.
No,
Oh, no, that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay. This is the entrance. Well, this is a little above the entrance. Again, really ornate. We saw these types of lights at other sites throughout the Holy Land. So we didn't really have time to mentally prepare for this because we got it
That's
so
the
quickly.
worst part about these things. There's so much coming in all the
Yes.
time
Yeah.
that you can't assimilate it.
Yeah. So we had this is where I'm almost positive it was an Armenian sacristan. He was adamant, no pictures inside, which was fine. Do you know the people in front of me were taking pictures, and that troubled me. I'm not a rule breaker, and I
Better not be.
absolutely no, and absolutely was sort of offended that people would
I know.
just
I
so
know.
callously disregard that.
know.
So I got stock photos. So these next two are not my photos. So this is the tomb. There were,
and you go in like 3 at a time. It was
Yeah.
it wasn't like just one person.
but it was a tiny little room.
It was a tiny
Yeah.
room, yeah. And as people
Why
were
do you say
leaving-
no? Why do you say no photos? No reason. But you were just respecting what he
Respect,
said.
yeah.
I would say just because,
Yeah.
of the holiness of the site.
the whole,
And I was fine with that. I actually was surprised. Many other places there were no, the
Restrictions.
churches, there were no restrictions. hence why I have so many photos. But I was fine with that.
Any chance what Mary's holding in her hand there? By any chance what that is on her left hand there?
I don't know.
I can't see that closely, but I don't know what it is. That's okay.
This is more what it looked like. It was dark. There were candles.
Yeah.
And this is what we did. You know, we walked in 3 abreast and just prayed, put our rosaries down, laid our heads down. And then you have to kind of go out the same way you came in because it is so
Kind of a
tiny.
tight portal to get in.
Yes.
And out of the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, you know, we walked in and I had this just profound instant reaction. And even the second time I went back, same thing. Just when you think of the magnitude of what happened there. We learned that people in those days were buried in caves. So this is a replica, well, not a replica. This is one of the old caves where people were buried.
which was kind of adjacent to the
Like Lazarus,
Church.
maybe in some
Yeah.
ways too.
Mhm.
right.
And we learned that they would put maybe I mentioned this last week, they would put the stone in front of the
cave.
and the feet by the stone. So the body would be in head first, the feet were by the stone, so that if someone perchance was alive by accident, they could kick the stone away if they were strong enough
Gee,
after
wait,
laying
wow,
there.
wait.
for a
But then
couple-
after the third day, they would seal.
they would seal it,
So they
because
there
then
was-
they knew there was
I
no
guess
chance.
Yeah.
that may have happened.
right.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the picture on the right is like one of those, a different kind of grave with a little bit of a wooden thing
But
in front of it.
But you could actually we went in to
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
tombs, caves.
You could go in.
Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
scrunch
Yeah.
down and
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, it was kind of scary.
Yeah.
Okay. We went to a couple other places that are not in the vein of Christ's passion, but I thought if we had some time, and we do, that would run over them. So this is the Tomb of the Prophets that I mentioned before. The picture of Tom overlooking the Mount of Olives is the big view from the east looking west at this.
Right. That's on the hillside below the Mount of Olives.
Right.
There. Okay.
And so the tradition, according to the Jewish tradition, 3 prophets are buried here: Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi.
Wow.
And I mentioned that these
Oh,
are
there
the
they
pebbles.
Right.
And so this is a sign that someone was here paying respects.
Now you'll see that over in Grandview, but not to that degree. But you'll see it.
But I never knew what that meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neither did I.
So that was very
The
interesting.
bonding.
Yeah. These are the remains of the pool of Bethesda. So if you remember the story of Jesus, you know, there was a man there who couldn't.
Chapter 6, I think, of John. I think.
Let's see, John 5. You're
John 5,
very
okay.
close. Account of Jesus healing a paralyzed man at the pool of Bethesda. If you're fans of The Chosen like we are, there is a really wonderful depiction of that story in there where the man, I guess the springs would bubble up.
And they did. That was true.
But you had no notice. So
Right.
people would wait, and because they believed that was the healing power, they would run to the spring, and the paralyzed man could never get anybody to take him there fast enough.
You know, it's
Couldn't
funny.
crawl there.
I say that's his excuse. You know what I mean? I kind of say, I'm a little cynical, I guess, about some of that explanation on my part.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being a little
I
cynical
think there's a
about
little
that.
artistic license in there, but
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
still,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
kind of an amazing way of bringing it to life.
Roll
So
yourself over there, dude.
Yeah.
You're over 38 years, you know.
So
But anyway.
this is right outside the Basilica of St.
It's amazing
Anne.
that you could still visualize where the
Yeah.
pools were, and
Yeah.
If you look at the top right hand photo, this must be someone's home because they were hanging laundry out. So the 2 tiny little red squares in the top right hand part of the picture is somebody's laundry, which I found very kind of humorous. That again, and Marty asked a question last week, I think, where he asked
The people live where the people live around there.
Yeah.
Do they live there?
when
Yeah.
we were in Capernaum, and that we couldn't tell that people were living. here you knew people were
Yeah.
living here because
Yeah, and
the
Jerusalem is
laundry.
like layers.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're you
Yeah.
know, here's 1,000 AD, here's 1500 AD, you
Yes.
know, so it's, and they are all, it's kind of close quarters too.
Very
isn't
close
it?
quarters.
So I thought that was pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
And there was a chapel there too, wasn't it? There was
Yes.
at
This was
old
the one where
Bethesda.
you talk about you couldn't get in. We were there at noon, and they must have been closing for lunch, and we had to get in and out, and our guides were not being very respectful of those times. They wanted to finish their teaching, but it's a beautiful church, very sparse, and this is the gardens outside of the church, really beautiful.
It's beautiful there.
So this is a French Roman Catholic church, and it's in the Muslim quarter of the old city of Jerusalem, located on the site of the birth of Mary. And the
Oh.
last thing we'll talk about is the
Okay.
tomb of the Virgin, one of the tombs of the Virgin Mary, I now know. This is at the base of the Mount of Olives. So we were kind of going back and forth depending on what amount of time we had. So this is called the Church of the Sepulchre of St. Mary, also known as the Tomb of the Virgin Mary. It's in the Kidron Valley. So remember, I talked about the Mount of Olives.
It's near the Last Supper.
No,
No.
no.
Okay. Okay.
It's at the bottom of the Mount of Olives.
Okay.
It's actually right across the street from Gethsemane, right?
Okay.
So it's in the Kidron Valley before you go up to the east.
Now, before we started, we were talking about this, and I mentioned that in Ephesus, which is where John went, where the church, the Gospel of St. John was conceived, and where John apparently was in Patmos and Ephesus, that there is also claim that Mary was buried there in
I didn't know
in
that.
Ephesus.
I don't think they mentioned that.
Yeah, and it's an interesting claim, and this one here too. I don't know which one is considered more historical. It might be this one, I think, that's more historical in that regard. But I don't know. But I think it's interesting that we have these two places
And
where,
there's really no tomb, right?
and there's no tomb.
Not
Yeah.
because
Mary
It is
assumed
in
in
the Bible.
the same
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
There's no remains, or
So
yeah,
there's
she
no
assumed that.
evidence
Yeah,
of-
yeah, right. So it's a little tiny place in Ephesus.
Yeah.
Of course, there you go, a little tiny
Yeah.
place. There you go.
And again, you have to go downhill. They have those beautiful hanging lights down the steps.
Wow.
Again,
It's
very
kind of busy
ornate.
looking.
Yeah.
They like busy looking though. They do like they do like stuff.
And so we got a chance to pray this is one of the altars on the way down.
quite a few steps.
Yes.
It was
yeah.
a-
Now
was
that's
hike.
a beautiful shot.
So that is from the Mount of Olives, looking at Jerusalem. It's from the Rehaven lookout point.
Now I'm trying to pick out where is the tomb there. I can't.
It's right dead center. Can you see it?
Okay.
Yeah,
And
dead
then
center.
then the Wailing Wall is right below that, right?
Yes.
Now
Western
the
wall.
Western wall.
Oh, yes. Oh my goodness.
Western
Yeah, I know.
Wall.
Oh, sorry, I said that. But as the story goes, whenever the new wall or the new temple will be built there, this is Hasidic, but then somehow the tomb will have to go. So imagine the politics of that right now. Because this is the place where there's the only thing that's in there is a rock, so a huge rock, and so that's where Muhammad ascended into heaven, which is very sacred site for them.
I think I forgot to say that because
Yeah.
we talked about, I wanted to say, so for Jews, the wall is the holiest place where Jews are permitted to pray outside the previous Temple Mount from which they're excluded.
Okay.
Muslims believe that Muhammad ascended into heaven from the site, and Christians believe that Abraham
This
built
is
the
this is
altar,
Moriah.
where he was prepared to sacrifice his son,
Yeah.
and of course the Holy of Holies. I have a picture. They have a plaque in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre of, and I didn't get it then, but I understand it now.
Isn't
about,
that wild?
Abraham and Isaac.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this
So it's
sacrifice.
interesting. We think that happened in the middle of nowhere someplace, but that happened in Jerusalem.
Right.
Happened
Right
in
there.
Jerusalem.
Right there.
Yeah, right. And so I think it's just interesting, the politics of all that and all the here are these three religions trying to live together with a tremendous amount of tension a lot of times.
Yeah,
I
we
think.
talked about the loudspeakers and the call to prayer, the
Yeah.
Muslim call to prayer.
Yeah.
That happened in Jerusalem too?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That's my last slide. I do want to end again. If you didn't see last week, Father Matt, who was our priest on this pilgrimage, gave a sermon the one day, and he said, paraphrasing, do you really think Jesus wanted his life to be just for the chosen few who could afford a trip to the Holy Land? And he didn't, and he gives us the ability to have him every day in the Eucharist. And so I hope we've been able to show you the Holy Land through our pictures, but we have something even more special
And
right
I would
here.
also say, I don't think Jesus ever meant there be a separation between Christian and Jewish. I think Jesus always meant to be a good Jew, and he never meant, I think he really meant what he was doing to be the fulfillment of Judaism. And somewhere along the way, well, we all know where the split occurred, in Acts chapter 15. But the sad thing is that we somehow couldn't be together. And I was mentioning at Mass just in the one weekend that Edith Stein, who was Jewish, who became a Catholic, of course, Sister Saint Teresa Benedict of the Cross, said that her being a Catholic was the greatest expression she could offer to be a Jew. This was the greatest respect she could offer to Judaism. She never renounced her Judaism by becoming a Christian or becoming Catholic in that regard. I thought it was a very beautiful statement on her part. So sadly, our divisions were never intended, I don't think, in many ways. We should all be one.
We were traveling a year ago, and we had an Uber driver who was Muslim, and we were talking because he was
And
taking
we
us to church.
He was taking us
taking
to
us to
church.
mass.
Yeah,
Taking us
yeah.
to mass.
And it was a long ride. It was about a 30-minute ride. So he asked us all kind of questions. And that was a very, I forgot about
Because
that.
they're kosher, if they,
Well,
in many ways.
and in their religion, Jesus was a prophet,
Yes.
so he's revered in their religion.
Yeah.
Just a different
He's
way.
the one
different
still
way.
coming back.
That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
So we're interconnected in many, many different ways with all that. But thank you guys. Any
our
final
pleasure.
thoughts you want to share with the rest of us? We have a minute or two here.
No.
That was a lot. I mean,
It was a
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
lot.
And I could have, I had pictures of food. I had some funny pictures, like up at the top of the Mount of Olives at the restaurant where we ate. There was a guy with a camel selling camel rides. Everybody's trying to make a buck off the crazy tourists.
Off the tourists.
Yeah.
So I probably could have done a third hour on just kind of the miscellaneous strange things. The
Were you
food was
exhausted
great.
at times, just tired from seeing so much that
Yeah,
you almost couldn't wrap your
not
brain around?
physically, but
Right.
mentally.
Yeah, mentally
Yeah.
tired.
It's
Yeah.
overwhelming,
Yeah, there's-
it
there's
but
is.
in a
lot.
good way, in
Yeah.
a really good way.
Yeah.
Um,
But thank you very much for
Oh,
sharing
thanks.
that and
It's our
taking the
pleasure.
weeks to do that. We appreciate that very, very much. And just want to say that next week, we are going to be having our new deacons. Deacon Nelson, Deacon Rick will be here with us. And we're going to talk about their experience of their call to be a deacon, their preparation to be a deacon. What is it like for them now as they begin the process and their journey with all of that? I think it'll be a very neat thing for us because we know these guys. And so therefore, for us to be able to hear their story, they're just like one of us and all that. So that'd be a great thing for us to do.
And to tie it together again, for those
Oh.
who didn't watch last week, the connection with
yeah,
Deacon Rick.
Deacon Rick is the
Oh,
one who
yeah.
inspired us to go.
Yeah, because he
after-
went with Deacon Michael Russo's group over there at the Holy Land too.
And so here's an interesting sort of pay it forward. So Deacon Rick inspired us. We talked to friends of ours this week who just booked their trip. I'm not saying we were the reason, but coincidentally, it happened after last
Did
week.
they do it because they got there last week?
After last week. Well, they're friends of ours, so they had already heard about our trip. But I thought that
Anything
was
over
pretty
there,
cool.
Jerry, that you have to offer us? Anything?
No, just thanks from Lisa and Susie saying how much they appreciated it. And
Yeah, I think everybody was
help them
riveted at
understand
on
the
the
Holy
the pictures and
I-
stuff.
I hope so.
So very, very much so. Thank you very much for watching us tonight. Looking forward to seeing you again next week as we talk to Rick and Nelson about their journey. And thank you very much, Tom, Linda,
Thank
for
you.
sharing
Thank
your
you.
sharing,
Thanks for the
sharing your
opportunity.
event.
It was a blessing.
Okay,
Yeah.
very
thanks.
good. Thanks everybody for watching us.